turn to the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 19, verses 13 through 14. The children were brought to him that he may lay his hands on them and pray. The disciples rebuked the people, but Jesus said, "Let the children come to me, and do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of heaven." For such belongs the kingdom of heaven. These verses give us a lot of comfort, do they not? And you can see the window. You can't see it here unless you go back into the sound room, and it's the farthest one, almost hidden by the bathroom wall. Thank you, Lenny, for getting this picture for me. But you can see it is Jesus welcoming children. The problem is that it's little guys. You see, when we are little, it's not the kids we have to worry about. Who's it we have to worry about? Us. They can't drive, people. They can't drive. It's hard for them to get to church or to any sort of faithful gathering without us. And that's a challenge and a call, because here we see the parents so desperate for their children to know Christ that they brought them. Now, I know growing up for myself, whenever I would go to visit my grandparents and go to church, I wasn't even allowed in the sanctuary until I could sit and be quiet. Because my grandparents' church, it was a rule. Children should be seen and not heard. That changed, I think, as the world changed. But how many of us grew up with that mindset? And how many of us went, well, why? I know some people would ask that question. You see, we have to ask ourselves, if we believe that we are all children of God, then it does not matter how old one is, how little or how old one is, for them to be welcomed as part of the body. Because I know no matter how many times I have left or moved or gone away, I walk into my parents' house and I am 5 years old again. Feel that way? See, God has called us as a congregation and as a body to work together intergenerationally. And that's a unique term in some ways because we don't talk about it. We don't talk about the fact that as a church, we need people from 0 to 99 to function correctly. When you're missing any particular age level, you're missing a crucial and critical part of the body. Because we need wisdom, we need passion, we need, I can't do it right now, and we need, I will step up because I now have time. We need it all. Some of us are parents. actually get my calendar on the wall and get it all marked down and then go, oh man, I know I'm forgetting something. And when that day hits, how many of us go, oh golly gracious, how am I going to get through this day? For some of us who are retired, we still feel that, right? It's just we now have the excuse of old age to say, oh, I forgot. I got called old today, so I'm using it. See, in the life of our church, we go through cycles of time and of love and of change. There's been a lot of changes in our church. Some of them are noticeable. We painted a couple rooms. We've changed the chairs out in front. If you didn't notice, we did. Some are a little bit more subtle. We've lost members. Through death, through illness. And we've gained members. Through birth and rejoining. We go through these cycles because, guys, these are the cycles of our lives. But I want you to take a moment and think about something. I want you to think about your first church experience. Close your eyes and think about your first experience in the church. What do you remember? Is it a person? Is it the colors of a window? Is it that ugly carpet? Is it the stairs that you had to climb to get to your Sunday school room? We all have those memories, many of them from when we are young. Not all of us, most of us in this space came to know God and came to know the church when we were little. The only thing I want you to think about is a person. Think about a person, not your parents. But think about a person who made you feel like you were important the minute you walked in the door. I want you to think about that person, and I want you to take a moment and just praise God for that person, because that person is probably part of the reason why you are sitting here in these pews. See, our influence of faith is to not be like Jesus' closest followers who said, oh no, you're not welcome. Because you're too young, or too little, or you're not mature enough. That's what Jesus' disciples were saying. They were saying, this is the Messiah. How can you understand that? I know the older I get, the harder it is for me to understand that, because I am held in awe by the power of Christ in all those ways. And yet, I look back and my life of faithful living started when I was a child. It started when my parents would drag my butt out of bed each Sunday morning because going to church is what you did. It started with youth group, with vacation Bible school, with Sunday school, with children's worship. We didn't have Worship and Wonder when I was little. But those things were not possible without adults who said, "You are welcome." Think about it. We are living in a world in an eschatological, existential crisis of faith. 70+% of our country will affiliate with Christianity, and less than 20% go to church. There's a disconnect there. And people say it's the way we worship, it's the way we do things, it's the way that we're not modern enough. We don't have the rock band with the flashing lights and all that stuff. We don't have all the bells and whistles, and so that's the reason the church is dying. We haven't kept up with the times. And I agree. I agree that we haven't kept up with the times. But I don't agree that those times are the times of all the bells and whistles of technology. I agree that the times are that we have not kept up with the fact that we've allowed the world to take over. Instead of faith pushing the world out, we've allowed the world to take over and take over our Sundays. It's the truth. You look at our country over the last 60 years, from back in those 1950s, 1960s, when restaurants and gas stations and everything started opening on Sundays, you see a significant decline in church attendance. Because we no longer made it a priority. We weren't like these parents that said, "Let me get to Jesus. I want my children to know. I want to know." Somehow, some way, we had to challenge ourselves. We had to say this is a priority. We have to say our faith is a priority. And it starts here. I can say, let us all come. Let us gather. Let us be in worship until I'm blue in the face and my voice is gone. We can put banners and signs and flashy things all over the city. But at the end of the day, if our hearts are not saying, "I need this," we don't do it. We know we'll find every excuse in the book to get away from doing something we don't necessarily prioritize, right? And so our challenge, my friends, is to let us come. Let us be. Let us remember that we are still children. We just need to be the ones driving ourselves, challenging ourselves, and asking ourselves to gather. Jesus said, "Let them come. Do not hinder them." So what hinders us?